come to you this morning, this first Sunday in Lent, conscious of our own sin, conscious of our own distractedness. Help us now to listen, to focus on you, and to hear from you through the Holy Spirit, because of the sacrifice of your Son, Jesus our Saviour. Amen. So today is the first Sunday in Lent. What is Lent all about? Normally on this Sunday we would have the Gospel reading of Jesus going out into the wilderness for 40 days, being tempted by the devil, because that's where we get our 40 days of Lent from. He went off for 40 days, we have 40 days. But I decided this morning not to have that reading because it's very familiar and we've all heard it before. We all know what it's about, don't we? Of course we do. We'll get a piece of paper later, you can write it down. I'm only kidding. But what is Lent actually about? Is it just about those 40 days of fasting, giving up something that we enjoy? Why do we have on this first Sunday in Lent that reading from Genesis? Why do you think we have the reading from Genesis?
It's the start of all things.
It was the start of all things.
And temptations.
It was the start of temptation. It was the start of sin, as Paul said in his writing. Genesis tells us about the fall, about the first sin, if you like, the first time, whether you interpret it literally or whether you interpret it as a general story. What it tells us is that from the very beginning, people have sinned. We all sin. There is not a person in this room who does not sin. Believe me. And if you think you don't, you're guilty of the sin of pride. So there you go. Gotcha. Everybody sins. John says it, doesn't it? If a man says he is without sin, he's a liar. We all sin. It's part of the human condition that we sin. What do we mean when we say sin? What does that word sin mean? What did Adam and Eve do in the garden that reflects what we all do all of the time? They disobeyed God's command. What else do we do? What if you don't know God's command? Can you still sin? Yes, says Lily.
We're all sinners by nature.
We're all sinners by nature. Lily, you nodded. That's it, just a nod. Don't want to say anymore. Yes, we can sin because, again, Paul says, even before they had the law, everybody still died because everybody still sinned. Even though they didn't have the law to tell them what they were doing that was sin, they still sinned because sin is part of who we are. Sin is when we disobey God. Sin is when we act through selfishness, when we do what we want for us, a desire to have something that maybe we shouldn't have, or that might hurt somebody else, or to not consider how our actions impact on other people. It's not just about breaking rules, it's about an attitude. Sin is an attitude that we all have. And during Lent, we take a period of time to take responsibility for that attitude, to look at ourselves honestly, not beating ourselves up, not crawling on our bellies, going, oh, I'm nothing but a worm. It's not about that, but it's about being honest with ourselves. It's about looking at ourselves and taking on that responsibility and saying, there are things in my life that are not as they should be. And we can all find things in our lives that are not as they should be, because we all sin. It's the human condition. We have a mini Lent in our service every week, don't we? When we do the confession. And we come to God and we say, we're sorry. The confession we had today, I wish I'd changed it now. The confession that we normally use, or that we often use, says, I have sinned through what I've done, through what I've failed to do, through my own deliberate fault. Sometimes it's the things we do, sometimes it's the things we don't do, sometimes it's things that we know we shouldn't do, but we do it anyway, just like Adam and Eve. Did God really say, yes, says Eve? She doesn't say, oh, I don't know, you might have a point there, Mr. Serpent. She says, yes, God said we should not eat from that tree. And the serpent said, go on, it'll look good. And you know what? It'll give you wisdom. So she eats it, even though she knows. And she's admitted. And Adam is there with her. I assume he's listened to this conversation. We often let Adam off, don't we? I mean, Paul doesn't. Paul blames Adam. Adam gets the blame. It's through Adam's sin. But people say, well, it wasn't really Adam, was it? It was Eve, that woman, who did it. But actually they were both there. They both sinned. They both did it. And we've been sinning ever since. And so we have this period in the church calendar where we take some time to just take responsibility, to just focus and think about the things that we could do better, the things that we don't do that we should do, the times when we deliberately break the rules or do things that we know we shouldn't. Because that's what we do. And we do that in different ways, don't we? We have Lent observance. Some of us might give something up, something that we really like, something that we really like to do, or we really like to eat, or we really like to have. And the reason we do that, the reason we give things up, is because it helps us to focus our minds and our wills. It's about that temptation. It's about putting temptation there so that we can resist the temptation. No, I've said I'm not going to do that, so I won't do it. And building ourselves up, strengthening ourselves. A bit like when you do physical exercise. The more you do it, the stronger your muscles become. The more you resist temptation, the stronger you are to resist temptation. So during Lent we might do that. It gives us a discipline of going without something. And when we resist that temptation, we remind ourselves of why we're doing this. We're making a conscious effort, an intentional effort to be better disciples of Jesus, to better follow Jesus. In recent years, there's been a trend, rather than giving something up, taking something on. Don't give something up for Lent. Do something different. Do something positive. We're all about being positive in today's society, which is not a bad thing. Both are good. Do something positive. Maybe read your Bible more, pray more, keep a journal. I'm terrible at journaling. I have tried so many times and it's just not something that comes naturally to me. But 2 years ago I kept a journal throughout Lent. Well, most of Lent. And maybe a couple of days when I didn't quite manage it. But I was quite pleased with myself because I made that effort every day. This is something I've decided to do. This is a discipline that I have decided to impose upon myself in order that I can remind myself that I need to use my will in order to follow Jesus. It's not something that just happens. I have to decide to make different decisions. And so that's what Lent is about. Psychologists tell us it takes about 6 weeks to develop a new habit. And Lent is 6 weeks. So over Lent we can develop a new habit, which is great. A new habit that helps us to follow Jesus. We've been looking for over a year now at holy habits, haven't we? Holy habits, habits that help us follow Jesus. Habits that help us be better disciples disciples of Jesus. And we have a holy habit for the period of Lent. It's on our Lent course poster. Sharing resources. Because in Acts 2 it says that they had everything, they were together and they shared everything. They shared what they had. They didn't hold on to their possessions. If someone had a need and somebody else could fulfill that need, then they shared in order to fulfill the needs. And that's an alternative focus that we could take up. If you haven't decided to take on something, or you haven't decided to give something up, you could decide to share more what you have. It's a good discipline. It's a good habit for us to have as Christians. Sharing resources. Because we all have things we can share. It might be material things. You might have a bit of money tucked away that you could give to someone. I don't know. You might have, tools, or too many baking tins, or too many bits of computer, or too many bits of car that you could give away to people. You might have things like that. But we all have things that we can share because we all have skills. We all have experiences. We've all lived. And in living, we have gained things. We've gained knowledge. We may have gone on training courses or done something in our work life that is specific. But throughout our lives, we gain experience. We know how to do things because we've done them. We know how to deal with situations because we've dealt with them. We may have had to look after a loved one. We may have had a member of our family with mental health issues, or with dementia, or with drug problems, or with a long-term illness. We may have had to go through the court system at some point. We may have had to apply for benefits at some point. We all have experiences. When we talk about sharing resources, we too often think about money or material things, especially in the church. I don't know what it is about the church these days, but we're so caught up with money. But sharing resources is about more than that. What did God share with us? Paul tells us in the Romans reading, doesn't he? Paul gives us a fuller picture. He goes back to Genesis and he starts there with the sin, with the fall, with all of mankind being caught up. Everybody sins. But then he looks past that. He looks into the future for him and to the recent past, to the death of Jesus on the cross. God shared with us the ultimate resource, the source of life eternally, the source of faith, the source of encouragement, the source of mercy that helps us to overcome those temptations, that helps us to make those decisions, to act and live differently. The source of grace, wonderful grace, and given freely to everyone. That's a resource we can share. I asked you a few weeks ago to go home. This is where you all shuffle and look at your feet because you haven't done it yet. To go home and ask somebody, how can the church serve you? What can we do that will be of help to you? You're all right, James. What can the church do to help you? And some of you have been asked the question and some of you haven't, but the answers that we're getting back slowly are really that people want a place where they can just feel accepted, where they can come and do the things that they enjoy doing, where they can be with other people and just be. That's a resource that we, the church, have, that we can share with others. There are lots of things that we can do. And I encourage you again, if you haven't asked the question yet, because if we don't ask that question, then we don't know how to share the resources we have. If we don't ask that question, what we're saying is we don't really care about the people out there. And if we don't ask that question, where do we expect this church to be in 5 years' time? Through Christ, we become friends of God. That's what Paul says. We become friends of God. We are forgiven. We don't have to live in sin anymore. So we can become friends to our community, to our neighbours, to the people we meet. That's what we're called to do. That's what Lent is really all about. Changing who we are so we can go out and be better followers of Jesus, better neighbours, better friends. Making that conscious and intentional effort to be the Church of God, wherever we are, whatever we're doing, to be changed and to show that change, to share the wonderful grace that God has given us, because we've received, and we've received freely. So that's what Lent is about. Don't go and beat yourselves up. Give up whatever you want to, take on whatever you want to, but make that effort to share. To share what you have. However little you may think it is, you don't know what a difference you may make to somebody else's life. And we have everything we need in Christ. So there's no reason to be afraid. There's no reason to think we can't do it. Let's just go out and be the people of God.